and welcome to the event that we're running, the panel event for Global Perspectives. Thank you for joining us, for watching this, and we hope you enjoy the discussion that we're going to have with some eminent guest speakers. The title of this panel event is Taking the Initiative, Rethinking Our Response to the Climate Crisis. And as you'll see in just a moment, we have some very interesting speakers, and also we have some questions from you that you have sent in for the speakers that I will be putting to these speakers to a general discussion. On the screen, you can see our speakers and also some members of the teaching team who are here also to participate and hopefully put in some questions as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go into our introductions. And first of all, of course, I'm Rob Johnson, the module leader for Global Perspectives. And I'm going to go over to Caroline first. Would you like to introduce yourself very briefly?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. My name is Caroline. I was at European Business School, so Regent's University London, from 2013 to 2016. So I'm an international business alumni. Since then, I have done a master's at Warwick in intercultural communication. I have worked 1 year in Dubai in human resources, and then I decided to do a second master's in environmental studies, and now finally working for Greenpeace as plastics campaign lead. That's basically all I do at the moment. Would you like me to say what I'm doing right now at Greenpeace as well?
I think we'll get to that in a moment, but it's interesting. Where is the focus of your work and where are you based?
Good question. So thank you, COVID, for not for displacing everybody. Well, I was in Tel Aviv when the whole pandemic started, doing my master's. Everything got out of hand in every country. Israel wasn't the best place to be. So I'm back in Germany. I am German, so my family lives here. So I'm currently working from home in Frankfurt, Germany, but working for Israel.
Excellent. And is there much of a time difference?
There's only an hour time difference, so it works
fine,
perfectly fine.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much, Caroline. It's lovely to have you back, and we appreciate you giving your time today and coming back to talk to the students who are following in your footsteps. So thank you so much for that. Next, we have Andrew Ure. Would you like to introduce yourself, Andrew?
Hi, yeah. Greetings, everyone, wherever you are around the world. I'm Andrew, and I'm based here in London, East London. I've been locked down, like many of you, most of the year in COVID, and yeah, we're in a global crisis. That's we can all see very clearly. But interestingly, I think when you think about a crisis and you look at the Chinese characters or the Japanese characters for crisis, you see two symbols. One is great risk or danger, and the other is a great opportunity. And I think we're here today and to talk about that opportunity, how we rebound, how we grow, and how we pivot, rethink what we've got to do. Of course, COVID is the immediate threat, but the bigger threat that we all, I hope, know about now is the way our home planet is changing very rapidly and the risks we're facing. I've got a lot of free time at the moment. My normal day job in corporate training has very much slowed down. It's gone virtual because of the COVID risk. So I'm spending a lot of time studying. And at the moment, I'm attending every day the Sustainable Innovation Forum. Today, we'll be hearing from the Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and City Mayors, Prince Charles. And I've been hearing a lot of interesting things, but the point they keep underlining is that we have something like 7.5 years left. At the current rate of carbon production, we have 7.5 years left before we risk runaway climate change and the kind of costs we don't really want to face. So time is absolutely of the essence. Also, we need to reduce our carbon output by 50% by 2030. Now, a lot of them are talking about mobility, transport, renewables, energy. We all know about that. Electric cars. Yesterday was industrial transformation. That's a lot more difficult. Concrete, steel, aluminium, plastics. They're also talking about technology that is not yet at scale, like hydrogen, carbon sequestration, burying carbon under geological formation. So this is where the circular economy comes in. We believe that rethinking how we produce products and services is another strategy to add to these others in this short time frame. And by our calculations, current efforts on greenhouse gas emissions reduction is going to bring about 55% of our target. And we think the other 45% or so can be done by a radical rethink on how we produce products, services, and so on. The good news is it's happening already. And many of you use Spotify. The virtualization, digitization of media, Netflix and so on is saving a lot of energy. We're seeing it in things like car sharing. We're seeing new mobility systems and solutions in our cities. We're starting to talk about food and how we produce it in different ways. So it's happening. But we need governments to act. We need support. We need finance. We need various diverse collaborators to get together. And that's where I come in, because in my job, I help different teams, different cultures, different groups in business, society, get together, talk, negotiate, present. So this is a real opportunity for me. It's a real joy for me. I'm excited, really excited by the challenge. Also worried, as many of us are, but I'm very much looking forward to what we can discuss today. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. And we certainly appreciate you sparing your time and coming in and sharing your professional experience as well. Fantastic. Thank you. And then I'd also like to bring in Parker and Sylvia as well. But Parker, if you want to go first, just to introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
My name is Parker. I'm a third year actually here at Regents, heading into my semester here soon. And I'm also the team leader for Regents Enactus. Enactus is an organization that helps students start social enterprises. So not just normal businesses, but businesses that, have the goal to give back. There's about 7,300 universities that are involved, and we just started ours this year. So, I'm really excited getting people together, getting new ideas. I'm originally from Texas in the US, so it was already, a good kind of cultural meshing coming over here to the UK. And what I really love is that even with Enactus now, I'm getting even more views from people all over the world and finding out different ways of like, oh, I'd never even thought of that issue. I hadn't been exposed to it. And I think that's one of the great things, not just Enactus does, but Regents as well, is bringing students from all over together and just exposing people to new ideas and new ways of doing things.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Sylvia, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the students about your role if they don't know you at Regents?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm an annoying environmentalist. That's how I like to define myself. So I'm a huge fan of, the first two people that spoke, and I'm very excited to be here. I work in the entrepreneurial hive at Regents University, and I've been very lucky to, lead on the Enactus initiative. And I've been more lucky to have Parker as a team leader and the SU president as support as well. We both are UK advisor for Enactus. So we are incredibly, for me, it was really, truly the, dot joining moment, as I like to call it, because I love to work with students, but I also really am passionate about these kind of causes. So I think there's nothing better than seeing students working on this type of project to, make a change. And yes, for students who are listening, if you have a business idea, if you want to take part in Enactus, whatever kind of support you would like to receive, obviously, get in touch with the Hive. And Thank you for having me.
Just because we're dealing with the first years out there, they may not be familiar with what the Hive does. So could you just, talk about?
Yes, absolutely. So the Hive was incepted 3 years ago. It's an incubator. It's a space where people who become officially entrepreneurs with Regions, it's a 24/7 office. So not only a physical space, but I lead on the community, and we're really trying to boost this sense of belonging between entrepreneurs, but also students. And we have seen some students being hired by our entrepreneurs. So we're really trying to build this community, co-working with the alumni, external stakeholders, external company. And I have to say, this feeling of belonging and community is really boosting, the morale with our students, and maybe also energizing some ideas that have been, brewing, some business ideas. So we are incredibly enthusiastic about this, and we are there to support students who also maybe just have a theoretical idea to put it in practice and understand what support is there from them by the university.
Fantastic. I've got a couple of things to say there. I think we can tell the enthusiasm, Sylvia. Also, always be careful of saying that you're a 24/7 office. Because students are based all around the world. Yep. And also, I just want to make a point about the entrepreneurial focus of today's event. There are many students who are not business students who are taking global perspectives. Don't worry, it's open to everyone. And also, I actually want to make a point, and I think this would be backed up by Andrew, that if you just have the same kind of people working on projects, you can end up with what we call groupthink. Yeah. So if you're studying acting or design or fashion marketing, this is all a really fantastic mix. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get innovative ideas. So I think we'll make this point at another event, I think, on global perspectives, and you might find it in any course you do on innovation, that it's very, very good to be part of that. Good. So we've had the introductions. We have another member of the team. Esther, welcome. You're welcome. And what I'd like to do now is just to give you a little bit more time to talk about the issue. And I'm going to focus you a little bit on the focus of our, kind of event today, which is taking the initiative, rethinking our response to the climate crisis. I think I'm going to start with Andrew. What are we doing wrong at the moment, and why? And how, obviously, how does the circular economy solve that wrong way of thinking?
Okay, and when you say we, I think that's the first question, because and it's not just you, Rob. It's every forum I've been on this year. Both of us as interculturalists, we know the world is extremely diverse, and there are all kinds of conditions around the world in terms of economic strength, in terms of political leadership, in terms of religious influence. We're in a complex world, but the point is, I think we share it. It's our home. As they say, there's no planet B, and we, humanity, have a great opportunity to make a more just and healthier future for our children. So, well, I think one of the points is this: Paris 2015, the world did come together, talked, negotiated, and made some kind of commitments. And if it weren't for COVID this year, we would have had the 5-year anniversary, the so-called COP26, which is going to be held next November in Glasgow. So this is what the world is now gearing up to. So 5 years down the track, we have to see where we are now and how we can accelerate. And the key word is accelerate. We're not going fast enough. So it's a big complex picture, and I don't pretend to say that the circular economy brings the full solution. It doesn't. It's a jigsaw puzzle. It's just one of the ideas. But I think what we can all agree on is that we're in a world where our current structures and systems were based on the Industrial Revolution, They were based on the power of the West as it grew. Now they're based on globalization, but many say that they're no longer fit for purpose. I'll give you an example. As we've just said, getting diverse people in the room builds creativity, entrepreneurial thinking. But if you think about how we educate, and if you think even how businesses are structured, universities, we're still very much in a kind of silo mentality where we don't get cross collaboration anywhere as much as we need to. And Rob and I were just talking before this session that some of the most useful conversations you have are over a coffee, they're in the elevator, they're over lunch, where you're thinking outside of the box. Of course, that's hard to facilitate in our current system. The circular economy I got really interested in really about 10 years ago. As I said in my intro conversation, I'm a nature lover. I'm a beach lover. I'm a surfer from way, way back, as you can see. And 10 years ago, I started to notice all this plastic trash in the sea and on the beach. So I started picking it up. And a few years later, organizations started doing that. Now it's huge here. There are huge beach cleans in the UK every spring and autumn. But we can't keep up. We can't keep up because the amount of trash is just growing and growing. So that was my entry point. And from plastic, I began to think about other forms of waste. And what they say about waste in the circular economy, I think it's worth remembering. First, nature doesn't do waste. If you look at nature, waste is consumed. It's used again in many different ways. And what we say in the circular economy is there is no such thing as waste. It's simply a resource in the wrong place. That includes carbon that we're pumping out into the atmosphere. It's really useful stuff. It's the stuff of life. If we could only use it in a better way, we have overproduction, chronic overproduction at the moment. So the circular economy on a big level is how to close these loops and how to connect the waste with, well, the so-called waste, these materials, with the need for those as a resource. Just on recycling, there's a lot of talk at the moment about recycling, and from a circular point of view, it's one of the worst solutions. The only worse thing than that is burning your waste or burying it or letting it go into rivers and seas. Because recycling typically brings a lower quality product or equal or lower quality product as a result. But crucially, it takes a lot of energy. And a much smarter solution from a circular economy point of view is to reuse, repair, remanufacture, share. We're seeing the sharing economy growing. And there are so many smart ways for us to do things in a more efficient way, using less energy. This is the thrust of the circular economy. And another final key point, it's not about having less fun or a worse lifestyle. It's actually about more fun, more equality, growth in a different kind of way. And one of the things that's stopping it is our financial systems, our business systems, our legal systems even are not built for a circular economy. They're built for a linear economy, which is about a linear economy, just to repeat, is about extracting materials, making things with them, and we're amazing what we can make from a clock to the space shuttle. We've made incredible things as human beings, but ultimately at the end of life, we assume we can trash that. And there's the assumption that we have a limitless amount of sinks to put our trash into, and that's not going to work on a finite planet.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think that's a really good sort of definition of what the circular economy involves. We have a question from one of our students, Reem, who I'm going to put it in the text box so you can see it as well. But it is, what new incentives can the UK government, and I might say can any government, implement to entice companies to develop a circular economy? So what role does the government play in changing people's attitudes? How should regulation be a part of that?
Yeah. Well, there's the old debate about the carrot and the stick, and there are a number of sticks being developed. So there's extended producer responsibility legislation going through Parliament now. It's expected to come out. A tax on plastics. You heard the UK government announce 2 days ago, no more petrol, diesel cars up to 2030. So there's lots of, let's say, regulatory and punitive measures being developed. But of course, that doesn't really help innovation. We also need great incentives. We need a leveler playing field. We need to enable this. And that's again, something that the government can be involved in, but it's not just the government. There's a lot of know-how in your field, in education, that needs to come out, connected with the private sector, public sector. So UK government, I think, I don't want to get too much into politics, but there's a lot going on here, as you know. There's a deadline coming up. EU, on the other hand, are on their second circular economy mission now. They're pushing this very hard, and there's a growing traction in the EU. Interestingly, in the EU, a lot of it is very pragmatic. It's about critical materials and access to them. If we look at Industry 4.0, a lot of valuable metals, precious earth metals are needed, but a lot of them are in difficult places to get to. Congo, China control, and so on. So from the EU point of view, it's about guarding and valuing these critical resource materials by use of a circular economy model. And many businesses are beginning to understand this too, that it's about, one, cost reduction, it's about resilience, it's about shortening supply chains. And goodness knows we've seen that during COVID, that global supply chains are pretty vulnerable and fairly fragile, more fragile than we thought. So there's an awful lot going on in this area, in this space, and it is complex. But I think the good news is a lot of governments are beginning to respond now and see an interesting way forward, shall we say.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring in Caroline now. So actually, I'm going to introduce Caroline with a question that we have from another student, Maria. I find it really hard to stop using plastics. What do you recommend us to do to reduce plastic use in our daily life? And of course, you can also talk about the work that you are doing, the campaigning and so on in your current position for Greenpeace.
Great. That's a really interesting question. Everyone doesn't really know where to start, how to reduce their plastic. But just to backtrack, so I work for Greenpeace Israel, and I am their plastics campaign lead for their new plastics campaign. So in Israel, we are currently campaigning for a single-use plastic ban. There's still no plastic ban in Israel. So this is what I'm trying to do with my team, bring more awareness to Israeli public that plastic is bad. Like Andrew mentioned, recycling is not the way forward. And we're just trying to tell everybody, look, we need a ban. The other countries are doing it, European countries, African countries. It's time for Israel to get a ban as well. But on to the question. So what can we do to reduce our plastic? Well, firstly, I want to go back to the mindset. So we nowadays have the mindset that we use plastic and we throw it away. It's become a convenience to use plastic. There's this term called, throwaway culture. We use single-use plastics and then we throw it out. I think there's been like research articles that say maybe we use like a plastic bag, or when we buy like a pastry or something, we use like the plastic wrap for maybe 30 seconds. That's it. And then those 30 seconds are for us. But then for nature, it's going to take 450 years to break down, and it's not going to magically disappear. It's going to break down into microplastics. It's going to land up in our oceans, in waterways. So it doesn't go away. So how can you change this mindset? So firstly, I think you have to be aware that the plastic you use now is still going to be there in 500 years. So once you have that mindset that you need to change from a throwaway convenience culture to a reusable and refillable mindset, also what Andrew mentioned, then you have to start thinking, okay, what easy switches can I do? And it's been made easy for us. There's lots of companies now that are producing reusable coffee cups, reusable water bottles. We've got our reusable cloth bags. It's not hard to find or purchase. You just have to be aware of when you go to Starbucks, when you go to Costa Coffee, okay, let me bring my reusable coffee cup. And sometimes you even get discount, which is great. And like the same with water bottles. As long as you're thinking ahead, I'm not going to go to Tesco and buy my water bottle. If you bring your refillable water bottle and then go to a fountain, perhaps at the university, then you just fill up your water. I think you just have to think ahead a little bit. The same if you're going into a restaurant. Well, now we can't go into restaurants, but when we can next year, maybe, bring your reusable cutlery. If you know that they have plastic cutlery, or if they use plastic plates, for example, which hopefully they wouldn't in the first place, but just be mindful and, bring your reusable cutlery. You can, if you really want to, you can bring your reusable straw or refuse a straw. I think you just have to be mindful of, I'm not going to use plastic. What are the reusable and more sustainable options out there at the moment? So hopefully that answers that question. Back to you.
I mean, sometimes there's a slight issue with people being a bit militant about changing habits, and they want, they say, oh, this is what we do, or I'm vegan and this is good for the environment, but then they'll try and force it on other people or criticize them for being like eating meat or something like that. So I think your focus on mindset is right. Individually, we have to make that choice, but we also have to influence other people around us. We have to find incentives, to encourage other people without alienating them. So I think, isn't it, that we've got to avoid alienating people and feel that they're missing out on things. Do you think that the use of plastics is just like a habit that modern society has? And in that sense, it's more about psychology that we need to get people to stop using plastic?
Yes, I think plastic has become way too convenient. When we go, out for lunch, we go to Tesco or Pret for a meal deal. Your sandwich is in plastic, your juice is in a plastic bottle, your crisps are in a plastic wrapper, your chocolate bar is in a plastic wrapper. The industry, the corporations, they have put everything in plastic because they're just pumping out more things to sell. And, it's making it convenient for us, the consumers, to buy, because not everyone's going to have, their Tupperware, or no one's going to buy a sandwich without some kind of wrapping on it. So over the years, and because now we're quite a modern society, they've made it easy for us to purchase items which are wrapped in plastic. So I think that mindset, has to change as well. And the corporations have to change. They need to think of other possibilities, how they can offer their goods, but without the plastic.
Thank you. I think we have Sylvia who has raised her hand. So please come in, Sylvia.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question for you, Caroline, because this, if I can, do we have time?
Yes.
Okay, good. This has been, I had times in my life in which this, especially when I moved to London, this really was playing with my head. As I said at the beginning, I am an annoying environmentalist. And I think you said something that is such key, which is preparing in advance, which is changing that mindset and saying to yourself, okay, so I'm going to cook tonight so I can put the food in the Tupperware, so I can go to work with the Tupperware, clean the Tupperware, reuse it for, I don't know, 5 to 6 months or even more. So I agree. And, that mindset in which you go to Tesco and you say, okay, this sandwich is wrapped in plastic, the thin plastic that is even worse. What if sometimes I started to ask people, when you find the sandwich in the counter, to have it on the piece of paper so that then I can use the piece of paper to, clean my face. But having said that, what is really bugging me is that, as you just said, this, even people like us, right, that are conscious, that are aware, and, without mentioning the fact that this should be taught in elementary school, because that's where you switch people's mindset to understand how real this is and how imminent this is. Having said that, when you touched on corporate and how it's their responsibility fundamentally to stop producing certain type of plastics or certain type of, wrapping tools, what, like some like Greenpeace, right? What's the extent really power you have to influence this corporate, or who can do that to, incrementally make these changes? Because like Andrew correctly said, we're late, we're to not put it worse. So I was just really, because it is worse, let's be honest, I read a lot about it and I inform myself about it. And I had to work really hard on myself to not see everything so negatively, and to say, I'll do what I can. But at the end of the day, I can't chain myself to a plastic producer company. So I was wondering, my question to you is, what really is the impact that someone like Greenpeace or other organization can have on these massive companies? What can be done, basically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say, I'm going to take Greenpeace as the example. A brand like Greenpeace and a non-governmental organization such as Greenpeace, who are quite big in the environmental industry, I would say they have the power to kind of expose corporations. And along with, initiatives like Break Free from Plastics, we do a lot of like brand audits in the environmental industry. So we check the plastic waste on beaches and parks, and then we gather what plastic we found and who's producing them. So you've got your big culprits like Coca-Cola, you've got Nestle, you've got Unilever. And then when, for example, brand audits come out and we say, okay, the #1 plastic found worldwide was Coca-Cola, for example, then that kind of targets Coca-Cola, and everyone then knows, okay, Coca-Cola is producing way too much, plastic, Coca-Cola in plastic bottles. We're finding it in the oceans everywhere. And then I also want to mention what we can do as consumers, and I'm going to talk about from my perspective as well. So I've also been thinking about, how can I avoid all of this plastic waste? And yes, it's the corporations that need to change. And, I'm just going to take Pret, for example. So I want to buy my lunch, but it's all wrapped in plastic. So then me as an environmentalist, okay, do I enjoy my lunch? I'll buy a vegan sandwich because vegan is better than buying meat, but, it's still wrapped in plastic. And then you kind of weigh up your options. But, I've come to the conclusion that I say, no, you know what? I'm not going to support it. So I know there's this plastic waste. It's not going to be recycled. There's no such thing as recycling. I can go on about recycling. I had a huge webinar about it yesterday. So I'm just not going to buy it. So I'm telling myself, I'm just not going to buy it. I'm going to make my own sandwich. I'm going to think ahead. I can make a really nice lunch, bring my own Tupperware, and enjoy it as well. Why do I need to spend money to buy a sandwich, which is wrapped in plastic, and the plastic is going to pollute our earth anyway? So I think we as consumers and individuals, if we don't agree with something, or if we want to, plastic waste crisis, then you just have to start refusing. And for example, I'm just going to bring palm oil up as well. So a few years ago, I started doing some research about palm oil as well, and it's everywhere. And I started thinking, okay, I'm not going to buy products which has palm oil in it because it's just so devastating. So if I know a product has palm oil in it, I just look at the back and it would say either palm oil, palm olea, or random chemical names. If I know this product has palm oil in it and I like it, I refuse to buy it because I'm not going to support it. So individually, what we can do is just don't support it. You know, think ahead. What can I do instead of this plastic? Do I really want to support, you know, more plastic waste? So you just have to think no and just refuse it. As a consumer, you have purchasing power. And if you just don't buy it, don't buy it. You've got like other solutions. So I hope that
we have choices, and in fact, it fits in very well with a question that came from our student Amani, who said, how can producers of any product to get rid of using plastic to pack their products, and what is the alternative from your point of view? I think you've answered that. Basically, we can convince them to stop using plastic if we don't buy the products that are, you know, all wrapped up in plastic, and we go for a more environmentally friendly option. So I think that's answered that. But I noticed Andrew had his hand up. He wanted to come in there, so I'll bring Andrew in.
Very, very quick one. We spend a lot of times blaming ourselves, I think, as consumers. And, you know, we've got to think, and as intelligent inhabitants of the 21st century, we've got to think about these things. But words like litter, trash, were kind of invented in the 50s and 60s. And it was a strategy to put blame on the end user, the consumer, instead of the industry. This goes on today. So, you know, I've been through all of this horrible mess as well, same as you guys, blaming myself, thinking, do I buy this, do I buy that? And I've come to realize we're in a system, it's not going to change overnight, but you've got to pick your fights carefully. So a quick example, I used to go out with clients for lunch pre-COVID almost every day in the center of London, business clients, and we'd go to different restaurants. I'd always say at the restaurant to the waiter, no straw, please, no straw. And more often than not, they'd bring a straw because they're working on autopilot. So I used to get mad and angry, and I thought, don't be stupid, be smart, Andy. What can you do? So I would go up to the manager at the end. I'd say, can I see the manager, please? And then use tip, soft on the person, hard on the point. So thank you so much. It was a great lunch. We really enjoyed it. It was lovely. I asked the waiter for no straw, but they brought one, and I'm very angry about that. So I'm not sure if I'll come back, but thank you for the lovely lunch. Goodbye. And that kind of careful messaging can have a much wider impact than a small thing. Think about the ripples you can make, and see if you can influence more people with something as small as a straw. The straw for me is a symbol of the whole problem we're in. It's just a symbol of a much bigger issue. Yeah.
Thank you. Caroline.
Yeah, really interesting. I just wanted, you know, you touched upon, you know, waste and litter and recycling, Andrew. So I just wanted to bring a point on that, because I did, you know, some research on the history of recycling, and really not many people understand, you know, where recycling came from, because we have to recycle because we produced so much plastic. So actually, so everyone knows the green, you know, chasing arrows international recycling symbol. But, you know, around the 1990s in the US, so the oil and plastics industry, so the bad guys like Chevron, Exxon, they actually created this recycling symbol. And, you know, they lobbied in America, you know, to put it on every single plastic item and say, look, you can recycle plastic. And they even created like recycling centers, and they funded lots of advertisements and said, look, you can recycle in your local community. You're giving back to, you know, the earth. You know, you buy something and then you recycle it like a good citizen. But actually, the green, you know, recycling symbol, the triangle, was actually just a green marketing tool. So you buy more products and then you pretend you're recycling. So by putting this green triangle on everything, the citizens then thought, oh, I can just recycle everything. Plastic can be recycled, and I'm doing my part. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is recycling is not real. You know, we produce litter, like you said, Andrew. We have to be mindful of our waste, and we can't just, you know, pretend we're recycling away. Over to you.
Rob, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before I bring in Parker to talk about Inactus, I've got a question from Nadia, one of the teaching team, for Andrew. And it's this: what do you think of Prince Charles's recent initiative, Buy Once, Buy Well, and his fashion collection? So this is the idea that we shouldn't buy this throwaway fashion from Primark and so on. We shouldn't buy things to wear twice. We should buy things for our life, really. Nadia says she subscribes to the model, but is aware that one needs to have certain means to do so. Buying well is often a privilege. So what is your thought about that initiative?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I mean, in principle, great, but absolutely, if you haven't got the means, it's really hard to do in the current system. And, this is one of the richest people on the planet saying that. It's like Madonna saying we're all in this together, in COVID. So I'm all for celeb endorsements and for world famous figureheads getting behind movements. Great. Kelly Slater, the 7-time world champion, he's talking about the Circular Genes initiative at the moment. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation put out a prize for which company could create genes that could be fully reused. And now there's about 200 companies involved. It's really quite exciting. So celeb endorsements, great. Big names, great. But we've got to be careful about alienating people. Again, this point. So you have the Prince of Wales saying this, and he also has organic food produce and so on. But we look at food poverty in this country. We look at unemployment. We look at the damage of COVID. It could very badly backfire if it's not targeted correctly.
Yeah, thank you. Great. I'm going to bring in Parker now. And actually, we have a question from Reem that is asking about Inactus. Because in the last part of our session today, I just want to focus more on the practical things we can do to make a difference. And that's a big part of what we're doing in Global Perspectives as a sort of a general discussion module where people are interacting. But it's always a big question about environmental things. What can we actually do? And I think Inactus is one answer. So in response to these questions, and also just generally to introduce Inactus to us, Parker, over to you.
Yeah, first of all, I think one of the things we're kind of hitting on here is there's no ethical consumption under capitalism kind of model of, if you go down the chain of basically anything you buy, you're going to find something that kind of gives you, the shivers a little bit, and you have to make your own personal choices. I think like Caroline was saying, is like, okay, I'm a vegan, but it's in plastic and I have to make that choice. It's okay, which choice are you going to make? And that's an individual decision. And moving on to individual decisions, I think that's the crux of it. We can say it's the corporations. The corporations are people. At some point they were taught this was what's more important. So how do you change a corporation? You change the people in the corporation. And that starts with the education. And it's much easier to start a company that's going to be doing something the correct way than to try and change this huge company where the gears are moving already. And it's like, okay, it's going to take a lot of convincing. And it took a lot of convincing for Starbucks to get rid of plastic straws. It took a lot of pressure, for that kind of thing to happen, as opposed to if I open up a coffee shop, I can just choose from the beginning, like, no, I'm going to use either, paper straws or no straws at all. And those are the kind of little decisions that I think stuff like Inactus is really good at, is let's bring people together. Let's bring students together that have experience from all over the world, and let's find some social problems that we can help out with, that we can, it's not a charity, it's a business. It needs to, fund itself. It needs to support itself, but it's got a goal. The goal isn't just to make profit. It's profit for a purpose. It's to actually, put into, some, as one example, Andrew brought up food waste. One of the great Inactus projects that another university did was they would go around and get the food that was going to expire from local stores from all over, from the Tesco's and the Pretz and everywhere. And they had their own store where they sold it at a deep, deep discount to people that didn't have the means to go and get, fresh produce day one. And so that was a way of helping out, people with lesser means, and also, taking these products that were just going to be binned. And so it's those kinds of things, some of the things that we're working on, maybe not as environmentally focused on right now, but is the literacy problem. And I can say that's not environmentally focused, but it all ties in together. It's all the education of like, okay, if, there was a study that said 9% of adults, almost 9% of adults in the UK are functionally illiterate. Well, if you're functionally illiterate, are you really looking at everything for the environment? Are you able to read on what's going on, or you're just trusting what people are telling you? It all ties in together for the education part. And that's where I think, right now, the point that we're at is kind of that last little hump before, okay, you're in the business world full time now. So it's much tougher to get things changing than it is to kind of start it on its own. And so what Actus does is that we help start social enterprises. And in Actus, the organization itself helps us by putting us in touch with mentors that can help us out and figure out like, okay, you want to do something education focused. Tons of experience in that. Let me tell you where we went wrong so you don't go wrong in the same ways. Go wrong in different ways. And then they also have partnership competitions with BIC, Coca-Cola, Ford, where they will sponsor teams and they will like, okay, here's some mentorships and we'll also give you some money to help out. Like, oh, you've got this education initiative where you need some iPads. You know what? We can give you some money for some iPads. We understand that's a big upfront investment. So let's get your idea. Let's work on it. Let's hammer out the business plan. And then let's help you get on your feet. And that's really, and that goes hand in hand also with the work Sylvia does with the Hive for the entrepreneurships. But, I think the biggest hurdle that we have is overcoming the difference of, is it a charity or is it a business? And that, the two do meet in the middle with social enterprise and figuring out like, okay, you do have to pay for yourself. But one great example, I think, was Divine Chocolate, where they weren't profitable for the first 10 years. So it's not that you need to immediately make a profit, but you do have to find a way to be self-sustaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. The university had a speaker earlier in the week, and this was Francois van den Abila, who was a former student of Regent's who set up his own company, actually recycling. So I don't know whether it's the best, but it's taking plastic waste from the fishing industry, getting the fishermen to sort of bring in their own waste and then using that to create eyewear. And he has a very successful business, and they're expanding into watches and so on, and it's recycled plastic. So
I call that
entrepreneurialism. Upcycling, good. So there are these initiatives, and that speaker earlier in this week also made the point. You've got to have a functioning business. It doesn't have to be doing something for nothing. Make a good business that is in some ways helping to make the whole economy more circular in some ways, or at least cutting down on the waste or reusing the waste. So I think that's a very good point. For those of you who are interested, then please do follow up and talk to Parker and Sylvia in the Hive, and also through the student union, who are very keen on encouraging these elements. And it's also why we are getting the students on Global Perspectives to start thinking about positive initiatives that you can take, which could be environmental, or it could be any kind of positive thing you can do for the communities that you belong to, wherever it is in the world. Thank you very much for that. I've got a question from Katerina for Andrew. She asked about your because of course you're an intercultural trainer, and that's going into the corporate world and training people about communication and management and how to manage across cultures. So have you managed to get these ideas about the circular economy into that about managers? Is it related?
Surprisingly all the time, but it very often comes from them. The last 3-4 years, again, pre-COVID, almost every conversation now, whatever the sector, is about waste, resources, our carbon problem. And the good news is they're all thinking about it. They are all trying to work on it. Big corporates are like big ships. They take a long time to turn. The bigger you are, the less nimble you are. And I also love Parker's point. You know, businesses are made of people, and you guys, the youngsters here, you're the next generation. You will be running those businesses. You may have heard that British Petroleum, BP, have a new head, Bernard Looney. They've made this enormous commitment to go something like 40% renewable by 2030. But the interview I heard with him, he said, you know, one of the most important things we've got to do is become attractive for those graduates. They're not going to want to work for us. We're not cool anymore. How do we become cool? How do we attract them? How do we attract that talent? And all these, I talk a lot with high-level managers, C-level managers. They talk about this a lot, the HR people. How do we attract our new employees? How do we attract the young? So we are moving in the right way, for sure. We are. It's just we've got to do it a lot quicker.
Thank you very much. And I think there's some very good points there about leadership, and also about how some of us are still very much trying to be cool and failing. But anyway, we have another question, maybe the last one, because we are approaching the end of our time, and it's actually for Caroline. Something a little bit different, but from Amini, she asks, could you tell us more about your experience when you worked in Dubai? Because in the past you were in Dubai. Has it influenced you? What is the perspective from Dubai on the topics we're talking about today?
Yeah, really great question. And I'm excited to answer that. So I'll just backtrack a little. So after Regents University, I directly did a master's in intercultural communication, actually. So I do have a similar background, Rob and Andrew. I did want to become an intercultural trainer. Afterwards, I didn't really know what direction to go into. There weren't too many job opportunities in the coaching sector. So I got this job offer in Dubai as a human resources officer. So I said, why not? You know, life's an adventure, and there's many cultures in Dubai. So I thought, okay, let me try that out. In human resources is fine. I'm not going to talk bad about, you know, the corporate world or human resources, because it was fine. But I realized in Dubai that it is not what I wanted to be doing. And I think because I was in Dubai, so where there's a lot of like glitz and glamour and a lot of like opposition. So for example, you're in a taxi, it's 40 degrees outside, and then you see the water sprinklers sprinkling the golf lawns, for example. And then you're thinking something's not right. Or for example, on a 40-degree day, the next couple of days, suddenly you have like huge thunderstorms and like torrential rain coming. And then you're like, it doesn't really rain in the desert. What's going on? And then you realize, oh, it's cloud seeding. So that means the government is shooting, I don't know, chemicals into the clouds to make it rain in the desert, so that the weather cools down and that more people, you know, it's bearable to live in the desert. And another point, so in Dubai, it's a lot about like, you know, going out, you go for dinner, you go for brunch. It's about, you know, dining out. And what happens when you dine out, you know, you don't always eat on like what's on your plate. So a lot of food waste happens. And once you realize how much food is being wasted in that country, you know, masses and masses amounts of food waste. And they're not very keen on, you know, distributing expired food or, you know, giving food to the needy. You know, all of the construction workers from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, they haven't really gotten to that food sharing stage yet. So working in Dubai made me realize, okay, what are they doing with their climate? They're kind of manipulating their climate. The food waste is insane in this country. Do I really want to be, you know, working where this is the future? So irrespective of human resources, but being in that location, it kind of made me switch gears. And while seeing all of that firsthand, I thought, okay, I need to make a switch now rather than later. So I managed 1 year in Dubai in human resources. And then I thought, okay, I need to get some education so I can get into the environmental field. I decided to do another master's in environmental studies in Tel Aviv, actually. And then that brought me to Greenpeace in Israel. So I finally made the switch. But I would say, to answer that question, Dubai did kind of inspire the whole change sooner rather than later.
Thank you. And I think we are sort of running out of time now, but Caroline, is there any sort of last thing that you would say to our students? Maybe just a short sort of a bit of advice that you would give them, or something that they can do immediately to take the initiative and respond.
Yeah. So what I would say, and what I personally did, because I wasn't in the environmental field beforehand, is do your own research. Watch documentaries. There's the new David Attenborough film on Netflix. Watch that. Read books, really interesting books that kind of teach you about climate change and food choices. You can listen to podcasts. That's what we're all doing during COVID now anyway. And just be aware, be mindful. When you walk the streets of London, when there's actually people, are people carrying their reusable bag? Do you see people using their reusable cup? And by observing and by being mindful and being aware of other people, then you can kind of think to yourself, is this something I can do? Is this something I want to help with? So I think if you go thinking about yourself and what you want to do, then you have to be mindful of your choices and how you want to contribute to the bigger world.
Thank you very much. Andrew, a final word.
Just to come in on Caroline's points, one of the things we have is that we are all living in a kind of normal that we have now, and it's hard to imagine anything else. It's hard to have a vision of where we want to go. It's hard for some of us to have that imagination, except for the designers and the artists. And one way of doing it is to read really widely, read across many topics, as Caroline says, research more, wider, talk with lots of diverse people, as we've been talking about, people outside of your discipline, and try and stimulate your own environment. Get excited about the future. My recommendation would be a film called 2040. It's an Australian film where an Australian father is imagining his daughter in 2040 and the world we could create. And it's absolutely full of all the solutions we already have and what would happen if we brought them to scale. It's a great watch. Really inspiring. 2040. So see if you can find that.
Thank you very much. And Parker, what is your last bit of advice? What should students do?
Yeah, so I'd say, they can get in contact with us, Enactus at regents.ac.uk, or they can just contact Sylvia or myself if, maybe you have an idea of how to fix this, some kind of business idea, some kind of social enterprise idea that, would actually make a difference. Or let's say you don't, but you want to help someone that does. That's perfectly fine too. You don't have to be the one that's always coming up with the ideas. You can just contribute with the people that do, and that can lead to your own ideas later, or it can just be that, you're part of something that's, really trying to help and make a difference. So that would be, my main thing is, if you have any interest in it at all, and you've got, an hour a week that you want to help contribute, maybe even more, yeah, just contact us, Enactus at regents.ac.uk.
Good. And we'll be sharing some follow-up materials for all three of the speakers today. And that includes links for Enactus. I'd also like to say that the work that we're doing with our module Global Perspectives encourages students to get started. As Parker was saying, just, don't worry too much about having a huge, idea that's going to change the world. Start with something really small and see how it comes out. And then you can develop it, and you're not alone. You can work with other people. So that's why we have group projects in this module, that we're encouraging groups to sort of come in and start thinking about an idea, or at least have an initiative in mind that you can present. And then I'm actually hoping to ask the speakers today, Caroline, Andrew, and Parker, and Sylvia, to take a look at those ideas, those initial ideas, the little seeds that could turn into something interesting, and to be the judges for a little contest. So when people present those ideas, it'll all be online, but then maybe you can give just a few sentences of feedback on the shortlist that we present. So that's where we're going with that project. Finally, I need to invite the students to respond to the Pulse survey that we're putting out at the moment, which is to see what you think of the module and the course so far. And of course, finally, I need to thank our wonderful speakers today. To all of you, we really appreciate you giving your time for us and to answering the questions so well, but also giving us such an insight into what we need to do. And I think it's absolutely, invaluable in terms of what you've given us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It was a really enjoyable experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I agree. Yes.
Good. Thank you all, and best of luck. Have a lovely weekend wherever you are.
Take care.
guys.
Thank you,
Nice to meet you
Robert.
all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Great
everyone.
to see you, Caroline.
Bye.
Thank you.
Interesting. Great to see you, Caroline.